Hello there, and welcome back to the Real Talks podcast. After the success of the first 10 episodes, with current GA players like Kevin McMenamin, Cora Staunton and Brendan Maher, which were listened to in more than 80 countries, I'm absolutely delighted to be able to bring you another 10 unique conversations over the next couple of weeks with living legends of Gaelic Games. Up first, we have the incredible Oisin McConville. An All-Ireland winner with Armagh, Oisín was also a key member of the Crossmaglen Rangers team that won more titles than any mantlepiece could handle. To most supporters, Oisín was living the dream throughout his playing career, but the stark reality was that away from the highs of places like Clones and Croke Park, he was dealing with a chronic gambling addiction in his day-to-day life. It was a real pleasure to sit down with one of my idols to discuss the incredible life lessons he's learned along the way. My name is Alan O'Mara, and this is episode 11 of the Real Talks podcast with Armagh's Oisin McConville.
Dermot Marsden, 3 men against him. It releases Andrew McCann. How they could do with a goal like the one he got 2 years ago against the same opposition. This is inside towards McGrain. It comes back nicely. It's the first goal, and it's scored by Oisin McConville. It brings the Armagh fans to life. They're back in it. Only a point separating the teams. 19 minutes into the second half. A vital break. Watch as McConville was on hand, taking a little pass there and crashing it past Declan O'Keefe.
First of all, just saying thanks, Mel, for doing it, taking the time out. I know you're a busy man, you've lots going on. In terms of a bit of background, the first series with the guys, 10 lads that were currently playing, so it was just covering all different stuff, like Brendan Maher, Kevin McManaman, Niall McNamee, Jamie Clark, everything and anything. And it was really just about showing the more human side to our footballers and inter-county hurlers as well. And I suppose the second season, that the idea was to capture either lads at the tail end of the career or boys that had transitioned out of the game and maybe look back with a bit of perspective, I hope. And obviously I've got to know you over the last couple of years and through work and through football and different things, and actually went back to read. I was reading your bio, and it just really struck me the success that you'd been privileged to have in terms of Armagh and Crossmaglen. It was just the All-Ireland, 7 Ulster titles.
10 Ulster titles with 7 with Armagh.
With Armagh, yeah. So, and there was 2 All-Stars, like the All-Irelands with Cross, Ulster titles with Cross, Armagh titles with Cross, and then there was the fine tally of, I think, 11 goals and 197 championship points for yourself.
That's pretty good. I'll take that.
Yeah. The first question I was going to ask you was, when you think about those numbers and sort of people throw them at you, what comes to your own mind and what do you think of?
I suppose I would consider myself pretty lucky to have grown up with the group of boys that I grew up with. I suppose the thing that people may or may not know is that the group I grew up with from under 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, we were always successful. We won everything in sight. We won 5 under 21 titles in a row in Armagh. We went into senior level. I made my debut at 17, thinking it's just a matter of form. Even though Cross hadn't won an Armagh title for 7 years, and we're really struggling even to win championship matches and win championships. And we all came along at the one time. Myself, Francie Belly, the McEntees, the likes of Cahill Short, Paul Hardy, all these guys sort of came along in and around the one sort of time. And
was that just luck?
We thought, no, we had a group. We won an All-Ireland Community Games in Mosney. And do you know what? We also won a thing called a McGreevy Cup, which was an Ulster Schools title at primary school.
Okay.
And you're thinking, I look back and that, that video would have been pulled out now and again. And it was amazing the amount of players we got through.
Okay.
If you go to any club in the country, it'll say, we just can't get players through from even a successful minor team. All of a sudden you might have one player who stuck at it and got them through. From that group that was 11, 12 and 13 years of age, we probably got maybe 10 or 11 players through who were part of a panel to win an All-Ireland. So, but the strange thing about going in, first and foremost, was that you expected to win. 3 years had gone and we'd won nothing. And it was in the third year we actually managed to win. To win an Armagh title. We'd on won Ulster and went on won All-Ireland. And once we got the taste for it, it was very hard to hold us back then. But I remember 12 months previous, we were in a place called Ballincollig at a tournament. There was 4 teams in it. We ended up winning the tournament. it was a social weekend as much as it was anything.
Right.
So on St. Patrick's Day, we played the final that morning, and we were in the club rooms after. There was 4 teams. Everybody's having a few pints. We were staying for the day that, you know, it was on. And there was a guy who walked along with Joe Kieran and a lad called Ollie McIntyre. God rest him. Unfortunately, he died a number of years ago. But he was at one end of the social club, and we were at the other. And the All-Ireland Club final was up on the TV, and he points up at the TV, boys, and he shouts down to us in the bottom corner, boys, that'll be us next year. And we all hid because I could see all the other 3 teams laughing. And
what year was this in?
Our boys, that was 1986.
1996.
And I could see our boys being embarrassed. I was embarrassed because we couldn't win a championship, never mind. You know, we couldn't win a championship match, never mind a championship. 12 months later, that's exactly where we were. You know, and you can call it vision or you can call it whatever it was. But, you know, once that role started, then everybody wants to play with your club. The thing people probably don't understand about Cross is that there's nothing else. Unless you're playing, if you want to play a sport, you're playing Gaelic football, and that's the be all and end all.
Yeah, like, so you trace it back to there, and, you know, you the boys are sitting around the bar, you're laughing, going, Jesus, like, will that be us, will it not? But obviously, that year kickstarts what must have been an incredible journey for you. And even I was laughing, I was flicking through your book last night, and one of the things that struck me was just how much you obviously always wanted to play Gaelic football, especially for Armagh. It really just burned through the pages. But in terms of that, said I call out those career stats, and it's easy for people to look at them and think, you know, oh, he had a great time of it, like, it was unreal, it was all like, what a great ride he must have been on. But it was like, particularly the couple of earlier years with Armagh struck me, and there was I was laughing out loud at it. It was like you were a sub in one of the games and you were thinking, like, I'm getting up and walking out here because this is bullshit, what's going on.
Well, I remember, I suppose the low point for me was that, you know, when I first went in, I went in and I was 1-7, 1-8, 2-4, whatever it was a game. I thought to myself, this is a piece of piss, basically. This is easy, like, you know. I was only 18 years of age, and I played the whole way through the league. I'd done well, was dropped for the championship, didn't even get brought on the championship, and I thought, well, look, let's suck it up. You know, I'm sure it'll happen for me next year. Following year, played the whole way through the league, didn't get playing the championship. We were playing a match in Celtic Park. We were getting beaten by Derry. Martin McQuillan, who would have been even one of the older players at that stage, was taken off, and there was a player got injured, and they took Martin McQuillan back on. And I said, that's it. That's me finished. Like, and it was actually myself and Barry O'Hagan were sitting there, and the two of us agreed, you know, that we'd never be back.
Yeah.
But we were back the following year. And you just tried my best to go at it as much as I could. I tried to physically develop, because it was like my first year playing inter-county football. I was probably 10.5 stone at most. So I had to physically develop, although, to be honest, I wasn't getting that many hits, you know, or anything like that. So, you know, that wasn't my number one goal, but I knew I had to, in some way, physically develop, and that was coming naturally anyway. And then I was introduced to some strength and conditioning, not the strength and conditioning people are doing nowadays, but you know, a lot of body weight, and I would like light weights. I like lifting light weights. I wasn't building muscle the way, you know, the likes of Geezer and Paul McGrain, these boys were, but so that was my early years. I think that was the one thing that helped me more than anything, was that you have, you know, a sub on the bench who I seen myself was really going well at that time, playing well, playing with a bit of abandon, able to get scores. I needed scores. They took a wing half back off, a corner forward got injured, and they put him back on again. And I just thought, like, what is the point?
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose those feelings lasted for a while. I was actually dropped off the panel completely when Brian McAlinden came in. He didn't take me into the first panel. I was probably 19-20 at that stage. And you know, they took me back in for the championship. I started my first championship match that year and sort of went from there, you know.
Yeah, for those it was particularly that year or two, or say that from that day when you're on the bench, it was Barry thinking, feck this, we're out here. Like, obviously, what was the follow must have seemed like a million miles away. And I was like leading up to, I was reading through all that stuff last night. Obviously, the big thing that jumps around is the 2002 final. Like, I suppose when you think about that day now, is that something that stays really clear in your memory and that seems like yesterday, or is it something that seems really far away? Do you know what I mean?
It's a strange one for me.
Yeah.
It's a strange one for me because, and I know you probably don't want to go into this stuff today, but it's a strange one for me because I was in the midst of an addiction at the time, and a lot of the stuff that was happening was passing me by.
Okay.
Because like when people say about the build up must have been crazy, it was claustrophobic crazy because you didn't want to leave the house. But I found solace in the bookies. You know what I mean? And that's where I would have spent a lot of time. Yeah, that's where I would have spent a good bit of time. And obviously in the bookies you're going to get people who are going to be talking to you about football and the lead up and all. But the main goal for everybody in there was to try and win a few quid, or I'm sure there was a lot of people like me who were reliant on it or whatever it was. So a lot of that 2002 build up and aftermath would have passed me by. The actual game, it's good because you can actually look back on the game and you can remember little different points about it. But a lot of the football I played in around that time feels like an out of body experience for me. To be honest, a lot of it was playing from memory, or playing like that was your escape.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, coming up into that game, they were that I would say tense, and they were that focused that sometimes it sort of stops you playing. For me, it was like, this is great. Like, I get the opportunity to run out onto the field and I get away from the other madness in my life, and that was sort of where I was at. What
are the moments of the game? Because I'll come to some of the stuff that you've touched upon there afterwards. But in terms of that game, what are the moments that jump out to you?
Well, missing the penalty obviously is a massive thing, because there's a story in Armagh. I'll run you through it very quickly. There's a guy in 1953 who missed a penalty. He died a couple of years previous to us winning the All Ireland, and at the man's funeral, his name was Bill McCorry. The priest mentioned him missing the penalty in 1953. That's what he was remembered as.
That's what he was known.
What he was known as. And
was that going through your head when you missed it then?
My mum was the first thing that went through my head. Right. She was the one that kept reminding me of it. And she used to say to me, on many occasions, even coming up on the 14-16, like, she used to say to me, you don't really need to be taking penalties, do you? Is there nobody else?
Trying to keep you away from the heart, like.
Is there nobody else that could hit them or whatever? But I enjoyed the responsibility of them.
Aye.
And can I be honest, the majority of the free kicks that I missed down through the years, or the penalties that I missed, I didn't overthink them. Do you know what I mean? And I felt there was something I could handle, so I felt I was big enough. I suppose that was the one penalty that was probably bigger than me, if that makes any sense. And I knew there was a lot of people reliant on that. I didn't kick the penalty right. I was holding back, and then when I 99% of the time when I kicked free kicks and penalties, I never held anything back. I always just, there was always conviction in what I was doing. So I suppose that was the thing that was annoying me. And as I say, lucky enough, I had half time to sort of gather the thoughts. That's what I was just going to say.
Was it a good thing that it actually happened just before?
Yeah, because we had two guys who worked who worked with us that year, who were doing two sports psychologists, and one of them I was friendly with as much as he was working with us. And he made a few suggestions to me at half time, and nobody else really talked to me at half time. Joe never mentioned it in his half time team talk or anything like that. So that probably helped in that there wasn't an over focus on it, but I knew I had to in some way try and make up for it. So that moment, probably the couple of free kicks I hit second half, which were quite difficult, and then obviously sticking the goal away.
I watched the sort of the highlights reel last night on YouTube, and so obviously it was the penalty miss. And funny enough, I actually have a good memory of that game, because our family used to have a mobile home over in Clogher Head there, and there was hate caravans that were full of Armagh people, like, so we were, and I was good pals with all them, so we were a bandwagon Armagh supporter all summer, like. And so I actually have real clear memories watching that game. But as I watched it last night, it was like the 1-2, and you get the flick back heading on your way. And you know, now these days you see hate before, just fist that ball over the bar. Like, I was just looking at you, and I was like, I know you'd missed the penalty before, and I was like, this man's 100% going for goal. And was that the first thing that came to your mind when you were running through there? Was like, I have the chance to stick this.
Yeah, I was sort of pretty confident that I was going to score,
because the handy option would have been to take the point and run back out and say, I'm doing a bit here.
I would say in my career of playing football, I think I fisted the ball over the bar twice. Yeah, because I don't like it, and I don't like seeing players do it. And unless that's the only option on, there's no way I would do that. And
you went jukey near post as well. The poor keeper stuck there.
Yeah, well, the thing about thing that he, like, if you notice the keeper, like, you know, and I noticed, like, he was absolutely rooted to the spot. Yeah. You know, he had his far post cover, like, but he was rooted to the spot. Yeah. So if I had a bit of power, and it was always going to go in. But the things, like, that's playing football. That's just like, and that is continuously my argument, is that was just me going to the reserves of what I'd done at 12, 14, 16, 18, and playing games at inter-county level, whether they be league matches or whatever. You know, you're much better playing football than you are doing a million training sessions. Yeah. You never get that from a training session. Never get that from a training session. But you'll get it from games. And you'll get it from, as I say, pulling on the reserves that you've built up in 20 years playing football. Yeah. You know?
Well, and obviously you had a good reserve to build on. What was it like being one of the main go-to men in terms of score getters? Because I think, like, a sort of a free taker or a main attacker, sometimes the mindset has to be a little bit different. And as I was going through the book again, there was a line jumped out at me, and you had been beating the game, and a couple of guys kicked wide, and you said something like, you know, the boys kicked a few wides, but they always kicked wides, but I kicked a few, and I meant to be better than that. Was that pressure from you, from other people, or I was just curious around that line in particular just jumped out at me?
Well, I used to play along with a lad. I better not mention his name, but actually I will mention his name. There's a guy called Stephen Clark who used to play with Cross, and one of the things he used to say to me was, will you please get me a score? Get me into the position where I can get a score. And I used to say to Stephen, there is no position where you can get a score. I could give him the ball 14 yards in front of the goals and he wouldn't score. And I used to say, but that's the difference between me and you. Like, I can't go out, win the ball in the middle of the field, put in 25 tackles, you know, in the first 5 minutes of the game or whatever, or walk in the way that you walk. But my job is to kick the thing over the bar whenever you boys get it into me. So I just seen that as my job. That was my niche in the team. And that's why, you know, consistently, you know, that I was under no illusions what my role was in the team. And my role changed, and football changed and evolved as I played football. But I still knew that regardless of what my role was, or how hard I had to work, or how many holes I had to fill in from a half-forward point of view or whatever, I still had to get up the field and score. And the strange thing is that I probably scored as much playing as a half-forward with Armagh as I did playing as a corner-forward. You know, and I like scoring. I like being on the end of things, and as I say, I like that responsibility. I do see players, you know, who morph, like take the Gooch for example, who went from being their main score getter to being their main playmaker. Mm-hmm. I never had any desire to be a playmaker. Okay, you know, and that wasn't. I don't think it was a selfish thing. It was just that's what I built my sort of my football and career on, and that's the way I started, and that's the way I wanted it to end. And you know, that's for me, that was a consistent thing throughout my footballing life, was that, you know, I played to get scores regardless of where I was playing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, you're quite good at it as well. Where did you think, or when you look back now in terms of that, like the huge drive that you had in terms of going to get that? I know you're saying, you know, if you felt it was your job, but there's obviously an innate passion there as well, or a serious drive. And like, do you trace that back to being a younger guy playing lacrosse when you were doing that for the boys that you were playing with, and it just developed? Or where do you stand on that?
I just think that the majority of that came from me being at where, you know, the family that I grew up in. the area that I grew up in. As I say, like be under no illusions. Like this is football country. This is we don't have soccer.
Yeah.
We don't have rugby. We don't have athletics. We don't have a swimming pool. We don't have an athletics club. We don't have, if you want to go 10-pin bowling, you have to drive 20 minutes or whatever. That's all there is, and that's all there was growing up. So you could either fucking like it or you could lump it.
Do people say, do you remember the line you used in the BBC documentary? I watched it again this morning. You probably remember better than that. Yeah.
Wasn't it great to stick the 2 fingers up and say, regardless what you do, you can land your helicopters here, you can build your barracks on top of us, you can stop us, throw our clothes out in the street, throw our bags out, you can chase people going to training, you can try and intimidate us, but fuck yous, we're going to win an All-Ireland anyway. When we were growing up, we would have, it was oppression. We didn't see it as oppression at the time, it was just a norm for us. But when we went down the street and you met a soldier and he stopped you and he took the bag off you and he emptied it out on the ground and he made you put your clothes back in, and they wouldn't let you go certain ways to the football field, or they landed the helicopters at all. I mean, there was a serious motivation to stick the 2 fingers up and say, I don't give a fuck what you're going to do, but we're going to be successful. And that was the line and that was the line that a lot of people sort of latched on to from the documentary.
That was an incredibly powerful line.
Yeah, from the documentary. But I don't know if I was the first person ever to say that, but that was definitely the feeling, and I could feel that feeling in the dressing room. I could feel that feeling in the dressing room from 1996 on, because before that we all the stuff that was going on, we seen that as that was their excuse not to be doing well.
Sure.
Which was lame, what I mean, as much as you have to be proud of what we've done since, you have to say that we wasted 10 years feeling sorry for ourselves as well. So, and that's the thing, and that's what I'm saying about this part of the country being just completely football orientated, and we've no excuses, and we've had, when I was growing up, we had one guy who did the majority of the coaching for under 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. When you think about it now, it's absolutely insane how the man done it. He was in the football field 7 days a week, but he did it, and
for that love and passion of what it was for the community.
And we're still living off that, because all it takes then is 2 or 3 players every year just to add to a squad that's already
you've got your base
pretty good.
I think it comes across really strongly there just how important football was during that spell, but I suppose in contrast to that, one of the lines again, you're probably thinking I was never get out of the book for the last couple of days, but it was.
It's a good reminder because I've never read the book.
Yeah, have you not?
No.
It's obviously your words, and look, I know how that world works as well. But one of the lines used was that and coming on to the gambling aspect of it was you said gambling was my life and football was my escape. How, and I don't want to go down the road, me and you have talked about this before, where you end up having to rehash all the story completely, but just in terms of that line, what does that mean to you now? So it says gambling was my life and football was my escape, and really, I suppose growing up, you would have thought football was going to be your life. Do you get me?
Yeah.
Just what does that sound like, or what does that make you think of now?
It just seems so. My life now seems so far removed from all that, but I understand that it was part of my life. But I just sometimes I think about it and I think how did that end up being the case for me? And as I say, again, it seems as if it was somebody else living that life. When I consider where I am today and some of the stuff I do and what I base myself, what credentials I suppose I base myself on, what values I have, day to day, and when I consider where I was then, it doesn't fill me. It doesn't exactly fill me with pride, like that, I'm over the shame of it and I'm over the guilt and all that, but I do have to take myself back there sometimes to give myself a kick up the ass.
And check in.
Yeah, because there is times where you think, I'm really hard done by. Or you think, I might spend the next hour feeling sorry for myself. And then you take a step back and you go, what the fuck would I feel sorry for? I have everything now. Everything I've ever wanted. And all I ever truthfully, deep down, all I ever wanted was a bit of acceptance. And when I got that acceptance of myself,
yeah,
and then I settled down, and I found the woman of my dreams, and I have 2 kids, and I have a job that I love, and my life is that good. Sometimes I don't know if I deserve it, you know, so and I just, again, it's just, that's about what I'm doing today, and that's about my recovery, and that's about as I say, accepting exactly what I have, and not chasing anything. I'm not really chasing anything anymore. I've got goals. I've got loads of goals. I've got loads of things I want to do eventually, but I have nothing today that is going to make me any happier than I am. But as I say, I still have goals. I still have things I want to achieve. Some of them are in football. Some of them are outside football. But I still have things that, that get me up in the morning and drive me on.
That, I suppose, for anyone that is listening that maybe isn't overly familiar with your story around in terms of the gambling addiction, like I said, I don't want to go into all the stuff in the past, and because remember we were at an event before, and you shared the story about the surgery in the UK. I don't know if you're comfortable enough just saying that one, just to give someone an understanding, and I we will move on from that, because I don't want this to be an hour conversation around that time of your life.
I suppose the thing about I suffered a back injury 2003. We're off the back of winning All Ireland. I literally would have done anything to get back on the field. Yeah. It was very frustrating, and we were going quite well, even though we were beating the first round championship by Monaghan that year. I still knew we'd end up semi-final or maybe even better. But I got a back injury. I was supposed to go to Dublin and get an operation done. There was another operation I could get done in London, which was a lot more expensive. County board had told me there was no way they could afford it. 3 people come in and sponsor the operation. Jump on a plane, head to Luton Airport, get a taxi from Luton Airport to Bupa Hospital in Luton, get the operation done. Not allowed to fly that night. Booked the county board of me booked into a hotel over there. Get to the hotel on the way past from the hospital to the hotel. I see a bookies, and I think, if I feel okay when I get into the room, I'll give myself a couple of hours. Of course, yeah, but I'll pop out, and that's be a grand way to spend the evening. It'll go by. I can sit down in there. I don't have to, But anyhow, so being a compulsive gambler, I get to the room and I spend all of about 10 seconds there. I throw my bag on the bed and I walk back up to the bookies. £500 in my pocket. First thing I do is walk up to the counter, get a £20 note change, 10 and 2 fivers, get 15 quid, roll it into the tiniest little ball that you can imagine, stick it deep down into my back pocket, and I start gambling, and I win and lose, and I lose and I lose until the only money that's in my pocket is that 15 quid. And the reason why I kept that 15 quid is that's how much the taxi was the next morning from the hotel to the airport. That's not taken into account eating or anything like that. So I sat in the bookies, and for the first time it started to affect me physically, and I started to shake, and I felt myself shaking, and I could see there was people in the bookies who were having a look, but I didn't care because they didn't know me.
Didn't know who you were.
And I didn't know them, and I'd never see them again, or hopefully I would never see them again. And I wrote out a docket for 15 quid, and I crumpled it up and I threw it away. And I'd done that maybe 2 or 3 times, and eventually, after sitting there and shaking for the guts of an hour, I got up, I wrote a docket out, put 15 quid in the horse was beaten. I'm deflated, I want to cry, I want to break every win in the bookies, I want to, I just want everything to be over, I want it to end. And I walk back to the hotel, I set my alarm for 3 o'clock.
And you're walking back to the hotel having just had surgery on your back,
Yeah, but I'm walking back to the hotel, and I know that in 6 hours I'm going to have to get up 4.5 hours before my flight and walk 8.5 miles to get the plane. And I do that, and I get onto the plane, and I realise when I get to Dublin, I literally cannot move. And I wait for everybody to get off the plane to roll onto my stomach, and I manage to get myself to my feet, and I walk down off the plane, and the whole time I'm thinking, this is it. This is a line in the sand for me. I'm never going to find myself in this situation again, because I hate myself, and I hate gambling, and I hate everything about it, and I hate what it does to me. And I got home, and the next morning I was on the phone trying to hook, scam and scheme to get enough money to have another bet. And that's just the way gambling sort of went for me, and it was I had a lot of those false dawns. I had a lot of times where I told myself and there always was another time until the 12th of October 2005, when that was me. I ended up in treatment, and from that point on, my life went in a completely different direction than it had been going.
Yeah, like, first of all, thanks for sharing that story, because I know, so we always talk about going back and having to relive certain memories.
I actually don't mind. I don't mind going back and reliving stories, because it does take me back to, and it sort of gives you a realization of where you're at that time. It's just, it's not something I do every day of the week, like,
I remember you just saying that story one night when we were at an event in Dublin. It stuck with me, to be honest. I'm just thinking, like, and your reference there saying, right, I'm never going to do that again, and you do it again. But I suppose, which brings me on nicely to the point where you say, right, no more. And so everyone always talks about the gambler having to get to the rock bottom, or the alcoholic having to get to the rock bottom. I suppose the decision to go and get treatment obviously was a hard one. It took a long time to get to, but it obviously had a very lasting impact in your life. And one of the things I was thinking we might just talk about a little bit was the role of the counsellor. So that obviously benefited you greatly at the time from a gambling addiction perspective. It's something that benefited me greatly from a depression perspective, but it's something that you're obviously working in now and have a huge amount of experience and expertise in. I suppose it might just be an interesting conversation around the role of the counsellor and how it can help someone, because I think a lot of Irish people in particular look at it and think, America, they see like the scene from The Sopranos with the psychiatrist there. People, like, you go in, you put your two hands behind your head and you say everything that's wrong with me, you get a prescription, out you go. But can you explain that role a little bit better for someone that's listening, that's curious about it?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, when I was first told I was having a one-to-one counsellor, I thought, that is fucking brilliant, because he will fix me and he will cure me, and I'll just sit back.
Sorted after an hour.
I'll just sit back. I'll just sit back, and he will be able to see exactly what's wrong with me and prescribe whatever needs to be prescribed. And
a 3-point plan, and I'm done and dusted. Thanks a million.
I thought it'd be definitely a faster process. I didn't think it'd still be at it 12 years later. But I suppose the thing about counsel and the role of a counsellor is, a counsellor is only as good as what he has sitting in front of him. And the one thing you need when you're going to a counsellor, if people choose to go to a counsellor, they choose to go to Gamblers Anonymous, or they choose to go into residential care, like, really and truly, the only thing they need is motivation. Mm-hmm. They need the motivation to want to get better.
And channel their energy in the right way.
Exactly. When I went into treatment and when I went into that counsellor, I was so intent on making sure that this was my time. And the first day I met my counsellor, he said to me, I know who you are. I know what you've done in football. And we'll never mention football in here unless you bring it up. This is not about football. This is about you. But the biggest thing he said to me was, if you can give this half of what you give football down through the years, you will have no problem whatsoever in, finding recovery and finding long-term recovery. And so I took that on board, and I'm so lucky. I consider myself lucky, and faith plays a part in it, because I do believe that the guy I got, a guy called Danny Cleary, who luckily enough I actually met up recently with, but I was lucky because he was the perfect fit for me. And when people go to a counsellor, you don't always hit it off with a counsellor, and if you don't, go on, move on, go and look for somebody else. Don't run from them, but sometimes a counsellor just isn't a fit for you, and maybe that trust isn't there initially. I'll know it, and the person who's sitting opposite me will know it. But I think the big thing is that, you know, from a counselling, when I'm counselling nowadays, the most important thing is just listening to people, you know, and being there for people. And people figure their own stuff out. Like, I've had people who I've counselled for, like, that's not something I do nowadays. I have done it in the past, but I don't sit down, I don't, you know, counsel people from, you know, for 10 sessions or whatever it is. But, like, I've sat down in front of people and like, I might have barely said a sentence in an hour. And during that hour, they've figured out exactly, you know, where they're going wrong. Because sometimes all we have to do is voice it. And I was told another thing, like, the best counsellor that I'll ever meet will be the guy who's sitting beside me in Gamblers Anonymous. And I've found that also true, in that, you know, they're just there to listen to you. And if there's advice to be given, well, then they will give you a certain amount of advice. But that's not a counsellor's job. Counsellor's job is not to give you advice. A counsellor's job is to see what you want. You know, what you want out of being there first and foremost. Do you have the motivation? And then it's all about figuring it out for yourself, you know?
Yeah, like, it's a funny one, and that's why I sort of be glad to have this conversation, because, like, a lot of Irish people, like, a lot of people just don't get it. And even, I know when I went to it, I remember thinking, like, first of all, I remember sitting there in the waiting room, start shaking with anxiety, thinking, what the fuck am I going into here? Like, and why am I here? But when I think back now, I think where it falls down for a lot of people, and I was guilty of it too, is, and you've referenced it there, was just waiting for them to go, grand, thanks for telling me that. Now here's bullet point 1, 2, 3. You do that. Here's this, and you're sorted. And it was a couple of weeks. I remember coming out and I was thinking, like, is this actually helping? Because the reality was, you were talking about stuff that you tried to bury and didn't want to talk about for so long. And I suppose the thing I was going to ask you was, particularly men in our society, is why do you think we're so poor at being comfortable at having those conversations? Because I read the forward in your book was from John and Tony McEntee, and they said they think we knew you had a problem long before he did, or something along those lines. Yeah. And I even know I've seen issues with my friends, and I'm sure my friends saw issues with me, but for some reason we're always afraid to open up the conversation. And
because you like I always say, like, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for that. Because we're so intent nowadays on how we articulate ourselves. And sometimes all you have to say is, what about you? And is there anything I can help you out with? And if you say that to somebody, the chances are they'll say no. But they might come back to you in 6 months and say, remember you said...
That's the beauty of it.
Remember you said, was there something? Well, there actually is something. And I think that's the big thing. People are that worried about, how am I going to say it? Just blurt it out. Just say it in your own way. We all have different ways of saying things. Like, I always say about, you know, I've had a couple of debates with Joe Brawley, but he'll always beat me with vocabulary. Doesn't mean his point, right? But I don't have the vocabulary that he has, and I think it's the same. It's something similar with, you know, with asking people if you know, if they have some sort of issue. Don't be getting hung up on how you're going to ask them. You know, it's just get the words out, and that person knows then that you're there for them. I had 2 brothers in particular who badgered me about my addiction and badgered me about, and like, I was always the one to say to them, no, everything's 100%, everything couldn't be any better, you know. And well, the strange thing is, you know, they're the guys, and my sister as well, are the people who I went to, you know, in the end, whenever I actually had, well, I don't even know about went to, you know, they, I suppose, came to me, but they were the people who I shared it with first, and I was able to share with over the next week about just the extent of it. And because I knew that deep down they knew, and I knew that they had told me they would be there for me. Because one of my biggest fears was, whenever I was, you know, coming to the end of my gambling, one of my biggest fears was that I would lose my family. You know, and that they would shun me or give up on me or whatever it may be. And, you know, but, you know, deep down, I knew that they'd said to me whatever help I needed, whenever I needed, it was going to be there when I caught myself on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you made two really brilliant points there. I think the first one is for anyone that's ever looking on at someone that's struggling in any way is just to ask the question and show you care. And the reality is the first time we're all it's a default reaction when we say no, I'm grand, get off me.
Yeah. But
I think like the big point there is just to ask the question and show you care. And there's nothing wrong with the person. Even if they don't come back to you now, so the chances are you're probably going to be the person that will come back eventually. But on the second point, why do you think we innately just shun that off, and our first reaction is to try and smack back and say, even though you're not okay, but you're just, I'm grand.
The majority of it is a pride thing.
Is that what you think it is?
Yeah, because we want to sort it out ourselves, and we don't want to show weakness. And that's something that I have always said, and I've probably said it that often now that it's sort of, I'm saying it in autopilot, and I need to stop that because that's a really important. That's a really important point that people need to get, and people don't need to hear it as a cliche. They need to hear it as in, this is exactly the truth. It's the way it is. That's exactly the way it is, and that's the way it was for me. It was a pride thing. I didn't want people to know that I had an issue because I spent so much of my time and energy putting a front out there that I was the man and that I had every single thing in the world going for me and that nothing could faze me, and that like a lot of the players that I played against, like, when I meet them now, they'll say, you are cocky, arrogant, so-and-so when you play football. And the strange thing that they don't know is that I was the reverse of that. Yeah. But that was what I had to put out there, yeah.
Do you think your athletic identity added to that sort of reluctance to face up to and hide? Because obviously it's something I've thought about a lot over the years, and I've talked to different people about it. It's like, so from a young age, particularly if you're a good footballer, like, you get attention, you get told you're great, and you have lads patting you on the back and saying you're like, you kicked 1-5 today, or you saved the penalty today, like, you're brilliant. And just people sometimes without realising it are just constantly building you up. And it's very hard for a younger person, I think, to actually recognise that, And do you think that adds to that sort of, that mask or that act that we all feel as if we have to put on then if you're a sports person or as if you're a high profile person?
There's absolutely no doubt that was one of the things that held me back from getting into recovery, was that as much as I thought at times it was something I had to do and how great of an idea it was, I just couldn't bring myself, because I thought, no, I can't, because like, look what I've built up, and I can't just let all that go. And there was I felt a certain amount of pressure to maintain the status quo and maintain the aura or whatever that I felt I had built up over the years, and that was the thing that sort of added to it. So absolutely, and that is, you're right, it's something that's not mentioned that often, like, and that's why people see, people look at people in certain positions and see them as impenetrable. And do you know what? The more people that come out, and even still today, I find myself, if somebody comes out and say that they were struggling with certain things, there's certain individuals where I go, holy shit, they were struggling. Right. I definitely didn't see that coming. And I think that was the thing with me at the time. I love myself and my wife, we love watching a bit of the old reality TV now and again.
MasterChef, yeah.
I thought we'd be able to get through it. This without mentioning that, but I'm thinking more, we like The Jungle. That's probably the one that we sort of watch all the time, but I was thinking of Ant and Dec, and you get Ant McPartlin coming out, and he's one of the more recent ones. Like, it probably seems like the end of the world for that guy, like it did for us all whenever we sort of we sort of started to tackle the demons. But like, I can only imagine like the good that will do eventually for people who are trying to tackle the problems, that they realise there's a guy that was struggling and he's doing well now. And sports people, on the reverse of that, sports people who come out and talk about their struggles, even that can be even sexuality or whatever it is. The more that sports people do that, the more that again, we're just lifting that stigma, and the more it makes it easier for the gay who's coming down the lane. And you know, I think that's I hope when my kids are, you know, 18 or 19 or starting to get into that stage where, you know, these things start to build up, that there's a comfort in you know, them being able to voice exactly what's going on. So I hope society changes enough by the time they're that age that, you know, they're not afraid to say, you know what, like, listen, I am really struggling with something here. And I think that slowly but surely, as much as men and young fellas, as much as we still say that they aren't great with the feelings, they are getting better, and I just hope that continues to go in that way. And the more positive role models they have, then the better chance to have.
Like, when you look back now, one of the things that struck me, because like, obviously for the length of your career and how successful it was, like, I look and I just think, like, how the fuck did you do it? Like, actually be able to manage those, and you probably, obviously you'd say you might have been managing them, but survive that dual existence. Yeah. One of the things that really struck at me, and something I heard you say before, was that, you know, in terms of football was your escape, and, you know, just got you that hour or two. But I think one of the really interesting things, like, so it's not the same for everybody. So for someone else, say like myself, football actually magnified some of the insecurities and the problems I had.
Yeah, no, I heard you say.
So it brought more pressure, and it brought different things. And I think it's an important point too, because, you know, what's right for me or what's right for you won't always be right for what someone else is. But do you ever actually think about how you managed to survive that dual existence? Like,
I think if I had to take a step back and wonder how I was doing it, then I would have collapsed.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
That's what I was sort of getting at.
I think it would have collapsed, and I think, you know, that's why I say, like, a lot of it's in autopilot, and a lot of it's from memory. And you know, I've heard you talk about that before, and I agree with you. But you obviously took a step back and looked at exactly what was going on.
Because I got to the stage where I couldn't survive anymore. That's what, and it was just really interesting, because, like, you were able to keep that up, and I think the intensity of it must have been.
Yeah, the intensity of it was insane, but I obviously had just a capacity to shut a lot of it out. Like, I mean, like, I could be in the absolute depths of despair, drive into training, get out of the car, and literally for the next 2.5 hours,
zoned out.
I would completely forget about it. Literally, it was like stepping out of one world into the other, and when I got back in that car, that world was there again. Like,
when I was going through the book, because it's something I would talk about my own life before, I was thinking, right, it was like, how much, because football was that escape for you, how much it dominated your sort of train of thought and your life. And a little bit of that fucking scared me. I was looking at it, because it brought me back to a certain time where I was solely dependent on football to survive and to feel good, and it was like, holy fuck, like, and even though I said, because you managed to get through such a large block of that now, and, like, upon reflection, like, the relationship with gambling obviously was toxic and wasn't good, but, like, how do you view your relationship with football for a period of your life?
Yeah, there was a period of my life where I didn't really enjoy football, but I played it because I knew.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel when you didn't really enjoy it? Like, because.
Yeah, it does sadden me. Like,
yeah.
You know, there's certain aspects of being even part of that team that do sadden me. Like, and, you know, we do meet up from time to time, like, and literally boys be like, they be talking about certain things that happen, like, and
don't remember them.
I feel at that stage, like, you know, was I really part of this at all?
Sure.
And that does sadden me. You know, it does make me emotional. It's even making me emotional now, like, but. Because I was part of something special, like, in that.
Once
not about winning
thing
things, yeah, but not. I'm not talking about winning things. Winning things in when I played football, yeah, we won things and it was lovely and it was great and all those things. There was so much more to football than just winning things.
What were they for you?
I think that the sense of achievement of doing certain things with certain people. Again, I don't want to get cliched on it, but, like, when we play with Cross, there was like a bond that will never ever be broken. We had a 20-year commemoration of us winning our first All Ireland, and we had everybody together. And honestly, we got into a room at the back of the club, and it was exactly like it was 20 years ago.
You just feel it, like.
Yeah, and the same boys were taking the piss out of the same people, and do you know what?
Yeah.
We were still cracking the same shitty jokes, but everybody fucking laughing at them. Yeah. And there was something about the amount of time that you were spending with those boys, and it's the same with the county boys. There's something about the amount of time. Like I spent whatever amount of years playing football across 20 years or whatever it was at senior 11, maybe even more, maybe 21. And for 21 years, I went in and sat in the same fucking place in the change room. And I sat beside the same person until, unfortunately, he was taken away from us, and somebody else filled in, and I sat beside them. But I always maintained that position in the change room. And at different times, young lads come in, and they fucking haven't a clue where am I supposed to sit.
Get out of my seat.
I go in and they're sitting on my seat, and I want to try and make them as much a part of it as possible. There's no fucking way they're sitting in my seat. You know, so it's much more than just winning things with people. But it was a special time to play football. And again, just to go back on it, that does sadden me sometimes that, you know, there's a lot of what I did playing football that I don't have really that much of a recollection of, you know. So I suppose that's sad in a way, but that's again.
There's also huge positive memories, and
there's huge positive memories. But do you know what? That's a good kick in the ass for me too. Sometimes, you know, that's, you know, going back to the addiction stuff. Like, that's a good kick in the arse for me sometimes too, to realise that, you know, it took that away from me too. You know what? I'm never going to let it take anything from me again, and that's great motivation to, you know, just.
Sharpens perspective.
To stay away, yeah.
One of the reasons that I'm doing this series is around the GPA obviously do their former players event every year in Croke Park, and so I'm trying to just capture different lads, different stories. And I suppose one of the big things as we sort of move towards the end of this is around transitioning out of the game. And for someone like yourself, who we've talked about it quite openly and honestly there, how important it was, how passionate you are about it, how difficult was that transition out? Or because of the place that you're at, were you able to manage it much better, or was it a release? I don't know.
It was something I fretted about, and yet, for me, honestly, transition has been great, because I realised that I knew my time was completely up whenever I stopped playing, and my finishing playing didn't have the fairy tale ending that it probably should have had, or that had circumstances been different that it would have had.
What was your last game?
Last game was an All-Ireland club semi-final against St. Bridget's in Mullingar that I started the game and I shouldn't have started the game. I did something the week before the game that I never did before in my life. I went up on my own, took a bag of balls and started practicing free kicks, tore my quad, and still got an injection, got laser, got whatever I needed to get, and still wasn't fit to play the game. And we were beaten, and I was taken off after 20 minutes, and we bowed out because I couldn't move. I literally couldn't move. I couldn't put one foot in front of the other. I was probably playing, honestly, I was playing as good a football as I was when I was 20.
You're obviously a lot freer though in your own mind and body. Like,
Absolutely.
Well, maybe not body, but mind certainly.
I was with a personal trainer 4 and 5 days a week because I knew I had to do it, and I was just doing that to even get through the training and the games.
But at that stage, you're choosing to play for the enjoyment of it, I'm guessing, rather than going saying, "Get me out of here for 2 hours, please."
Oh yeah,
it's obviously
absolutely. Yeah, it's like I would consider my footballing career to have 2 different stages. That was the stage in addiction and the stage in recovery. And I remember one of the first games I played in recovery, and it was like a foal that was just let out into the field.
Buck leaping around the place.
Yeah, I was skipping along and I was loving it.
Yeah.
And so that I would say my football career had two different stages. But even at 38, like I felt great. Just picked up that injury, and I thought I was starting to pick up a few niggles here and there, a wee bit easier, and I was finding it harder to get rid of them. And so I was very ready to stop playing. And then I went to matches for a year watching Cross, and I was like, I could not handle it. I need to get back involved. And I spent 2 years, myself and John Mack, managing. And then my last year with Cross Seniors was last year. I did coaching, and I really enjoyed that. I didn't really enjoy the management, to be honest. I enjoyed the coaching. And
why do you think the coaching was more enjoyable than the managing?
I didn't really enjoy. I think it was a time thing, because I think you need to be if you're a manager, you need to be talking to players a lot.
Sure, but the coach can just worry about their half.
Like with Garrett, like he would give me a remit of what sort of was going wrong, and then I go and I develop something that is going to try and counteract that or try and rectify it for the next day. And I enjoyed that aspect of it. In particular, coaching would be a passion of mine, but the management didn't really suit me. And then I realised that I have two young kids, and I realised that I needed to give them some time. So I've taken a bit of a step back from it now.
Now, look, the last question so we finish up is, we've chatted football, chatted the past and everything. I think it's only right that we finish up with sort of what your plans are for I suppose what life is now, and what your plans are for the future.
Life is trying to create as good a balance as I can. I suppose from a football point of view, I've done little bits and pieces with certain teams, and I had with the under sixes in the club. That is a pretty stressful hour every week.
That must be so different from the world that you're used to, is it?
Well, it is, and I love it because you could be Bob the Builder. You could be wearing a clown's outfit. You could be doing whatever. You could be, you could be whoever. There's no such thing as, I'm Oisin McConville, and
you can't get lost in the ego.
I have been successful in the past, or I have. They don't give one rat's, and include my own kids. My own kids in that. They just want to get as much enjoyment out of that hour as they can, and whether that be throwing stones at the barracks, or whether that be throwing stones at each other, or fighting, or throwing water at each other, or whatever it is.
It's fun.
It is, and I have to say that it is stressful, because
you're not throwing stones at the barracks.
Well, I can do something. But I think that the big thing is that it can be stressful because at under sixes, you're not quite sure whether you need to be teaching as many of the skills as you need to be, and how much time is left for fun, and then you just I would have serious plans. Like, I would have a serious plan of what session I was doing, and you go up and you realise, okay, see that piece of paper you have with you, just fucking crumple it up and throw it in the bin, because they've ripped up the script. They've ripped up the script here completely.
I got too hyper tonight.
So that's sort of what I'm at. From a work point of view, I work for Smallmore Castle just outside RD, and I do mainly interventions for them. So people who are in trouble, whether that be family interventions or otherwise, and so that's what I'm doing from across. Obviously, there's a nice bit of media stuff, at certain times of the year as well, which is great.
Do you enjoy that?
I do enjoy that. I do enjoy that because it's just really shooting the breeze, isn't it, about football? Some people can think that I wouldn't be. I was going to say I wouldn't be vain enough, but I probably would be vain enough, and I probably would have a big enough ego, but I wouldn't have a big enough ego that whatever I say goes, or whatever I say is gospel or anything like that.
You're not saying people trying to get a newspaper article out of it.
People are welcome to contradict me, and I enjoy that. And it's the same way as I've got mates, and we all have a sort of like an opinion on certain things football wise, and we could have a good bit of banter over it. And I would see the same thing about when you're chatting about certain games, that it's important you take it seriously and you know what your job is and you know what your responsibilities are, but it's also, important to realise that, there's like my mum is 81, she's seen more football than I've ever seen, and she's got an opinion on it. And I would never tell her that, that opinion doesn't count, because it does, and everybody's opinion counts, but it's just like, just because you're getting paid for it just means that, you get people, a lot more people get to hear you.
Sure.
And sometimes you have a certain influence in those things, and I try not to, I suppose, have too much of an influence and let everybody make up their own mind in certain games.
And just the last part of that question then, future.
Future is like, I do see coaching in my future. Whenever I stopped playing Gaelic football, I said that there was only two teams I would manage, and that would be Cross and Armagh. I sort of still think the same on that, but I suppose, coaching is something that I say is a passion of mine, and something that, I would be interested in doing and furthering that and improving that. I'm also with DKIT, Dundalk Institute of Technology. They're gone into Sigerson this year, so we have, I would like to think that in 5 years' time or 3 years' time that we would be a team that would be able to put it up to the big boys. And it's nice to have that. It's nice to have that little goal, and it's nice to be part of that planning.
Medium-term project.
Yeah, because it's much more than just putting a team out to play. It's about trying to get players in. It's about trying to make sure that they're happy academically.
Sure.
Happy, in themselves, happy where they're studying, happy, the fact that they've chosen to come here, and that, we're trying to, as I say, we're trying to build something. It's not going to happen this year, not going to happen next year, but you never know. It's something that could happen down the lane. When I first went there, literally, we were also Rans. We won 2 Trench Cups in a row, which unfortunately means we have to go up and play Sigerson against DCU and UCD and teams like that. But I suppose that's, as you say, that's sort of like a medium-term goal. That's
what it just struck me there, is because, especially a club manager, whatever, even in Intercounty now, it's sort of like a 1 year and you're on your bike, or 2 years. You're at the back of your mind, you're looking for something that's a bit more of a project.
I think the project is, with the college.
Yeah.
I think that's the project for now. And I suppose whether Intercounty comes calling down the road, I'm not 100% sure. It's something to look at, I'd always be open to, but it's a time thing as well. Like, the kids are getting older, and like, they want to go to football matches now. And I have to be responsible for that, in that I have to give them time, and so it's just a balancing act. And that's what I be telling people all the time. Like, I be telling people that it's trying to get a bit of balance in your life, and yet I'm saying that out loud, and I'm thinking, start listening to yourself, because I need the balance as well. My balance at the minute, I would say, is as good as it can be, pretty much perfect if you ask me, but it's sort of keeps trying to keep it there. And when somebody, it's having the ability sometimes to say no. I actually did a cookery demonstration last week at a Tate Avenue show, and
the MasterChef legacy lives on.
Yeah, and Conor McManus texted me and he said, "You really need to find a way to say no." with a photograph attached of me in an apron, and I thought that's actually a good point, But so that's the most important thing for me, is just trying to maintain that balance. Yeah,
100%. No, listen, we'll leave it there. Just from my perspective, just thanks a million for your honesty
Thank you
for the insight. It was incredibly interesting chat. One I really enjoyed, and I know anyone that listens to it will definitely take an awful lot away. So thanks a million for that, and best of luck with everything moving forward.
Thanks, enjoyed it.
Good man.
Well, that's it for this week, and what a conversation it was. I'd just like to thank Oisín from the bottom of my heart for his honesty over the course of the last hour. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gaelic Players Association, who are hosting a former players event in Croke Park on September 16. It's an amazing gathering that will bring together 540 past players from all over Ireland to recognise the wonderful contributions that they've made to our games. I hope you enjoy getting to hear from many more of these legends in the coming weeks, so make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes by subscribing to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud or Stitcher by searching for Real Talks. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at AOMTheCat. That's AOMTheCat, a terrible college nickname that I still haven't managed to shake off. My name is Alan O'Mara, and you've been listening to episode 11 of the Real Talks podcast.